Prem Sikka's on the call. Prem, how are you doing?
Good morning, Crispin, and good morning, everyone else, and pleasure to join you again.
Thank you for coming on. We often hear that inflation will go through the roof if these pay offers are made that are acceptable to the workforce. We also hear that there's not enough money. Can you tell us about the inflation issue? If, for example, the call workers were given a decent pay rise, would that cause inflation to go up considerably?
Well, the answer is no, because if you look at the current bout of inflation, it is not caused by workers, ordinary families having too much cash. It is caused by corporate profiteering. And ordinary people are just about keeping their head above water. They are struggling to buy food and energy. And inevitably, they have also cut back a lot of discretionary expenditure. Therefore, town centers are suffering and related things. So the current remedy for inflation has to be the government has to attack corporate profiteering and has to tax the rich. And you yourselves heard a group I called to Parliament on Tuesday last week called Patriotic Millionaires, and they were saying to the government, please tax the rich more because the country is in a dire state. And if we really want to build a sustainable economy, a just society, that is the route. So I think, let me look at it in two parts, the issues you posed and before you as well. As regard the private sector, we need to recalibrate the relationship between capital and labor. So for the last 50 years, capital's share of GDP has increased and the workers' share has declined. So capital's share, workers' share of GDP in 1976, that was a time when we had strong and effective trade unions, was 65.1%. That is in the form of wages and salaries. Now it is around 50%. That is a massive decline. And you can't reverse that really without changing the relationship between capital and labor, without going for free collective bargaining, without stronger trade unions. That is sort of one issue on the private sector side. On the public sector side, let me just put down some numbers and then I'll go through it. We have about 5.74 million public sector employees. Out of this, about 1.88 million are in the National Health Service, 1.5 million are in education, and the others are scattered around. Since 2008, the UK government has implemented a never-ending austerity and wage freeze, which is especially applicable to people in the people in the public sector. So in real terms, the public sector wage has actually plummeted, and the average wage is now around £27,000. A firefighter and police person, after 5 years of service, gets on average about 28,000 and 31,000 respectively. Remember, that is gross pay. Out of that, income tax has to be paid, national insurance has to be paid, and now the hikes in energy and food costs as well. Things have got so bad. Remember, Prime Minister and the others were clapping the NHS staff after COVID. Now hospitals are organizing food banks for the NHS staff. That is how bad things have become. The government has offered NHS staff around 3%, though there are hints that this may go up to 4 to 5%. But the consumer price inflation, that is CPI, is running at 9.1% now, and the retail price index is well over 11%, and obviously is going to continue to rise. So at best, what the government is offering, just to take one example, the NHS staff, is a 7% cut in real terms. That is, in a 1 year, a £1,400 less in real terms.
Wow.
And since year 2010, when the Conservatives came to power, they have already inflicted a real term cut of about £6,000 on the NHS staff. Not really surprising, is it, that people are struggling to make ends meet, And now there are many hospitals will be reintroducing car parking charges as well. So what do we need? We need much, much higher pay rises, at least in line with, at the very least, in line with the rate of inflation. So the government response is that a 1% pay increase in the public sector will cost about £2.4 billion a year. Okay, now that number is actually overstated, because remember, if you're giving public sector workers a pay increase, on that increase, almost everybody will pay at least 20% income tax. They will pay 13.25% national insurance. They will be then paying VAT on as well. They will also be paying fuel duty. So you're looking at least 35 to 40% of that returning to the government. So the real cost is actually far less. Next question, is it affordable? The answer is yes. Let me just take you through some numbers. Now, it is the governments which have bailed out banks, handed £895 billion of quantitative easing to speculators. They're actually telling us that they can't afford a wage rise for ordinary workers. So what we have learned is that governments can create money at the stroke of a computer key. Okay, they can easily create money to create any kind of society they want. If the creation of that money leads to inflation, then they can withdraw some of the money from those who have the most. That would be the richest. But this kind of argument does not carry much traction in Parliament, unfortunately, because people are still wedded to gold standard days logic, where the argument was you could not spend unless you had tax revenues. Okay, so let us follow that line of inquiry, that if we want that, we can only spend if we have tax revenues. There are numerous ways in which we can raise additional tax revenues. I will just give you 4 examples briefly. Firstly, by taxing capital gains at the same rate as earned income. So at the moment, earned income is taxed in the range of 20 to 45%, and capital gains in the range of 10% to 28%. If we equalize it at a higher rate, and then charge national insurance on the recipients of capital gains as well. So remember, unearned income in this country does not really carry any national insurance, and that includes capital gains. So this one just example of capital gains would raise at least £25 billion. Okay. Right. And remember, I was talking about 2.4 billion, a gross number for each 1% increase. Now, currently, earnings between £12,570 and £50,270 are subject to a national insurance charge of 13.25%. Incomes above that attract a national insurance charge of only 3.25%. So suppose we abolish this artificial ceiling of 50,270 and said this 13.25 would apply to everybody. That can raise around £17 billion. Okay, right. Of course, you can calibrate it in different ways if you want to. So we have dividends paid by companies at the moment. Those dividends are taxed at a lower rate than earned income. And the recipients of dividends at the moment only pay national insurance of 1.2 introduced this year. They don't pay the 12%, which was the basic rate last year. So if you simply taxed dividends at the same rate as earned income, that alone can raise about £8 billion. And then we also have a problem. A lot of dividends are paid to foreign residents with no tax deducted at source in the UK. That escapes tax altogether. And that can again raise a billion. So that's 3 examples so far. Let me give you the 4th one. People receive tax relief on contributions they make to the pension schemes. Those who earn less than £12,570 at the moment get zero tax relief because they don't have taxable income. So around 40 billion net tax relief is given every year, and about 2/3 of that goes to individuals on 40% and 45% tax band. Suppose you said everybody will get tax relief at 20%. Okay, in other words, you create level playing fields. That alone will then raise £10 billion. So hopefully somebody's got a calculator out there in your audience and been adding it up. I can give many other examples like a financial transaction tax, wealth tax, but there is no shortage of money.
Right, well, you've got all the answers, Prem. The only question I've got is a short one to you. Are Labour putting these forward?
No, that's me, and there's some other people on the left. And more interestingly, as you learned last Tuesday when you came to the Houses of Parliament, that patriotic millionaires who are some of the richest people in the country, they are calling for wealth tax. They are saying inequalities are destructive. They are saying that is bad for society. And indeed, they are also saying that the current political system is not responding to people's concerns and social well-being, and we do need political change. Now, whether the Labour Party leadership or any other particular party's leadership is listening, that is an interesting question. But I will continue to raise these things in Parliament as and when I get opportunities.
Well, thank you. We can't really talk much longer, but you've got so many ideas and solutions to this. It does prove that it's not a problem with inflation if people get a decent pay rise, and the money is there in the public sector especially. So thank you very much, Prem.
My pleasure.